Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jack and Joe show, which I think is going to be one of the happiest ones that we've had in years. Jack, how are you doing?
Very, very well. Almost no time to even think about what happened on Monday night because we're straight, 2 days away from another London derby against Crystal Palace. But we would be remiss if we did not mention events on Monday night.
No, it was an absolutely incredible night. One of those where I turned to my dad, who I've got my season ticket next to, with I'd say probably like 10 minutes from the end of normal time, and I really thought it was going to be one of those days. And I said, I can't see us scoring today. And then I suddenly thought in my head, oh my goodness, that's what all the Everton fans were saying last week. And that's all what the West Ham fans were saying weeks ago. The difference was we were dominating the game, but oh my goodness, the hurt that happened throughout the game of just not being able to find a way through and the frustration made it so much better. And I think that is the best way to win a game, let alone a game against your rivals, let alone with the added bit of the script with Fabio Carvalho missing a sitter in between. It was just like the script writers had almost dreamt up our dream final 5 minutes of the game, put it in front of us, and I felt very, very fortunate to be there. And the atmosphere was great. I think that, you know, the Fulham fans, the sort of let off from everyone, especially when the second goal went in, was not just a combination of this game and Brentford, but it was a combination of all the times that the late goals had been scored against us instead, including last week, including against West Ham. And both of those, United as well, first day, they were all reasonably undeserved or at least a little bit unfair. United one maybe the only one that doesn't fit into that category, but this one was the most deserved late turnaround I think I've ever seen. I thought that I won't mince my words with Brentford. I thought their performance was absolutely pathetic. I thought that they've turned up and they've been terrified of playing football, and they've got some great football players. And I, part of me understands you're 1-0 up. We were playing well, we were firing, and their game plan nearly worked. Part of me also thinks you could have done so much more on the night, and their chance when it went to 1-1 showed that because they finally went forward and they fashioned out the highest XG chance of the whole game. So nothing but laughter to share at Thomas Frank and his game plan. He said that uh, Harry Wilson's goal doesn't go in 99 times out of 100. I would say that 99 times out of 100 were probably about 4-0 up going into when he scored it normally. It was that sort of game. So I've waffled for ages, Jack, but that is my initial take on the game. It was just a great, great night, and I'd love to hear what you thought about it.
You're right in the fact that so surprised by the way that Brentford deployed their game plan. I think of Brentford as a team who are happy to play. Um, I think in retrospect, having time to sort of think about it and as to why they played like that, not that I really care that much, but because of how many goals they have conceded this season and where they found themselves in a position where they're in the lead again against the run of play within the time of which they scored, they were probably thinking, right, well, we need to shut up shop. Let's try and get not only a first away win of the season, but a first clean sheet in the Premier League as well. And they were just really scared to sort of mount any attack, and it just didn't remind me of Brentford and what Brentford are about. However, let's um, let's talk about that utter dominance that Fulham had throughout the whole game. Um, it made me feel like we are a team that is feared by not only Brentford but a lot of teams this season. The amount of times they just was like, "Yeah, you just have it, and we'll just defend our box." They were happy to sit in their shape. They were happy to defend, and they put in a lot of blocks and a lot of corners and blocks to go out for corners. And the second half was very, very, very repetitive. It was long range shots straight at Flecken.
Yeah,
The only one that caused any issue was Bassi. And you're right. I was thinking there's just absolutely no way through here. There just isn't. But in football, you need a bit of luck, and we've had our fair share of bad luck this season. I think maybe in terms of points tally, and would you say that conceding two goals late on in added time is bad luck? Not really, but also like we should have scored more in those games. But anyway, any team is due luck, and Harry Wilson. It wasn't really luck because he. It's not like it just came off his knee and it sort of looped in. He went to actively kick the football
Yep.
towards goal, and it went in. And I think, yeah, about time we score. Great goal. And even at 1-1, my thought was, I'm still not that pleased with a point. I'm glad that we're not going to lose to them at the moment. And then suddenly they come forward, and I genuinely, Joe, from my position, thought they were going to score. I saw it was Carvalho. It's a great save. It's a great bit of defending from Castagna, because he sort of realizes there's two other men in the box, and he quickly runs across the goal to get that block in. And then obviously Sanderberg puts in a Ollie Norwood-esque playoff final block to stop them from scoring. I want to ask you a question before we come on to the winning goal, because obviously this is the biggest moment, I think, of the season. It's the biggest moment, arguably the best moment since we've been back in the Premier League under Marco Silva, for sure. Why did the full-time whistle not go?
Reason being that when we equalised, Brentford suddenly made a bit of a song and dance about the whole. I mean, to be honest, actually, but before I even preface this by saying, I should say that I think the 6 minutes added on wasn't enough. I
Okay.
honestly don't. I listened a little bit to Besotted and their take live from the stands, and I'm not going to sit here and slag them off or anything, because to be honest, if it was the other way around and I was in the stands recording a live reaction, I'd be fuming as well. I'd say things that probably I didn't actually stand by and things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the game, we equalise. 6 minutes have been added on. I think it should have been more, but 6 minutes have been added on. And I think that Bisotted said that the final whistle should have gone at 96, but they made a substitution immediately after that. They brought off Jan Eltz, they brought on Yarmouk, and oh my goodness, Jan Eltz took his time to come
Mm.
off.
Mm.
Then they had their chance. We scored 1 minute later. So even just by the basic rules of the game, a substitution's 30 seconds, a goal's 30 seconds. They added on another minute. Add on to the fact that they were taking their time anyway during added time. They'd killed at least 30 seconds before we equalised. That's why we played it on a little bit even after we scored.
Mm.
And it was completely deserved. I absolutely loved that Robinson had the pace still, because I was a little bit nervous. At the other end, it almost seemed like Robinson was too knackered to get
Flag
back.
him.
Been
Big
a two
time.
from game. He had
Mm.
been, exhausting so much energy trying to get us that equaliser. But then he did have that final burst, great early ball from Kearney. But once again, Jack, like you said earlier, it all came back to Roeslev, who was very poor on the night and has been apparently very poor all season for Brentford, according to their fan base. I can't say I've seen enough of him, but on the night he was dreadful. He was the
Mm-hmm.
weak link for sure. He hoofs it back to us under no pressure. I think, thinking that the final whistle was going to go. If he'd have taken a touch, been composed on the ball, laid it off to someone, fired it down the line, something, they probably see out a point, which would have, like you say, been very undeserved and very frustrating regardless. But when that ball went to Robinson, we'd been having it all night where the ball's going to Robinson or it's going on the other side to either Tete or there was Nelson, there was Iwobi, there was Adama, like so many different options at different points of the game popping up in wide areas. None of the crosses were very good until added time, and these
Mm-hmm.
two. But there was just something special in terms of after Brentford had let that first goal in, their shape changed. And, they brought Ben Mee on. Their back five was a little bit all over the place, whereas they defended very well and been very organised for the full 90. It felt like they didn't know quite where to be. And that was great for us because it just meant that Wilson can pop up and, yeah, it sort of came off like almost like shoulder area. But oh my goodness, the celebrations when that went in were unbelievable. It's not, you don't normally see Fulham get credit from accounts like, I don't know, footy limbs, for lack of a better one coming to mind. It was just really good to see, and I haven't seen a let off like that on the Hammersmith end since Derby, I would say. I mean, it by far eclipsed the Mitrovic one on the last minute against Brentford, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But just because of the manner of the game, the timing of the equaliser as well obviously builds into it, and the fact that Carvalho could have just got that feeling for the Brentford fans down the other end. We'd have never lived that down. Or we probably would have done eventually, but we'd have not lived that down for a long time if Carvalho had scored the winner in those circumstances. So just a brilliant end to the evening, and it was bouncing afterwards.
It seemed like it was the first time this season where I was like, oh, I would really love to be in the stands right now. But I got some very good accounts from yourself and my brothers and my friends who were all there, and they said the cottage was literally shaking, that the Hammers event was literally shaking by the end of that game. Really, really pleased that everyone got to have such a great time in it. Honestly, from my angle, because I was in the Johnny Haynes, I was slightly to the left hand side of the the halfway line, and there was obviously the pillar in the way of the edge of the box, and you could see the full goal, but everyone was standing up and had to sort of creep behind. I thought it gone wide, and obviously
Yeah,
it didn't, and all hell broke loose from my end, sitting around two journalists who weren't Fulham fans. So it's really funny how at the cottage, you're sat amongst fans, literally, right, yard away from me, less than a yard. There's fans who have seats in the Johnny Haynes, and those fans were all games, getting frustrated and berating the ref, and I felt all the emotions that they did as well, but had to keep it more internally. However, when the winning goal goes in, I did lose it for a brief second before knowing I had responsibilities to tweet and do other stuff as well. Amazing. Genuinely can't believe it. Literally been like floating on a cloud for the last couple of days. However, it feels wrong that we just have to move on after 10 minutes and talk about Crystal Palace.
yeah,
It would have been nice if we could have sat down on another day and talk this through. But there's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of quick take podcasts. The Jack and Joe show moves very fast paced, and we've got another game. And Joe, I have to say, this is not only a very bad time for Palace to play Fulham, but it's also quite a good time for Fulham to play Palace. Not only now, I really am getting quite frustrated. Is there any confirmation that Will Hughes cannot play on Saturday?
yes. But weirdly, when I go on to, for example, I use FootMob. People have different apps and stuff. When I go on like the Crystal Palace injury and suspended list, he's not there. But what I can tell you for a fact is he's picked up 5 yellow cards in the Premier
But
League,
he also
and
got
that's a
one in the
1 game
Carabao
ban.
Cup.
That doesn't matter.
Okay,
Because, for example, he got that one in the Carabao Cup. That was on Wednesday night, and he was still able to play against Wolves on Saturday, so it didn't count as the fifth. The fifth
right.
came against Wolves. So yeah, he's suspended. Even if he wasn't, by the way, the amount that they players that are unavailable for them is quite shocking. But it's not just the
Staggering.
players, but it's who they are. I mean, Jack, you know more about Palace than I do, but I think from an outsider perspective, you see Eze and you think that's their main creative outlet gone. The rumours about Nketiah, obviously new signing, maybe not hit the ground running yet, but nevertheless another forward option. But also Wharton. What do you make of it in terms of do you think that it's such staggering team news that Palace will change their game plan? Or do you think they're still looking at this as a chance for 3 points because they're at home and they've had, yes, the Wolves result wasn't ideal, but they had quite a good performance in it and they won 2 back-to-back before that.
It's interesting because they do have enough players fit to play their system. With sort of wing backs, two in midfield, two behind the striker, and still sort of have a competent team. But also their bench will just be an absolute state on Saturday. There is a
Yeah,
lot of excitement about one youngster in particular who came on against Nottingham Forest. The name escaped me. I apologise. But I would like to say that yeah, I can't believe the situation they're in. I mean, they've got a fully fit back five, which is encouraging, plus Dean Henderson. So it'd be Henderson, Mitchell, Munoz on either side, Chalobah, Lequact, and Gehi. That's fine. I'd be very happy with
yeah.
that, even as a Fulham fan. Um, as in, even if we had those players, I'd be happy with that. And then the two in midfield, it would probably be what was it? It would be Czech Ducore, a good player, and Kamada, maybe.
Yeah.
And then the two behind the Christmas tree formation. The two behind the striker will be Jeffrey Schlupp and oh god, who would it be now? Because
Ah,
Saar, yeah, and then up front Jean-Philippe Mateta. On paper, it's an okay 11. I just worry that not been impressed with Kamada at all. Mateta's obviously a good goal scorer and like should be enough up front. I'd be happy to have Mateta in my team up top. Schlupp's been really poor this season, really poor. Ducore obviously um, is very, very good. I mean, the players they got out, Eze, Hughes. Oh yeah, it does say Hughes, yellow card. Let's go. Okay, Eze, Hughes, Lerma, Franca, Riyadh, Richards, Ward, Wharton. It's just extraordinary. Genuinely, they'll have 13 first team players available for them. What do you think the team's going to be for Fulham?
The team. I mean, the interesting thing here is Harry Wilson because obviously we didn't go into detail too much when we went through it because I think he's got his credit this week, but we have to back it up that he was a fantastic cameo, even regardless of the two goals. Playing more centrally was so dangerous for us. Um, and I think I'd love him to get a start from the off. I don't think it was Pereira's worst game on Monday, but I think he was probably the least effective of our three midfielders. I thought the Berger had a great game. I thought the Smith Rowe was very dangerous, linked up really well with Nelson on the left. So I'd really, really like to see the one change probably being Harry Wilson in for Pereira and go for a really attacking midfield. Nelson keeps his place on the left. I would still keep Iwobi on the right with Adama to come on as an impact
Hmm.
sub. Back four, I'd keep the same. Jimenez up front, Leno in goal. And I honestly think, Jack, I'll just do my score prediction, then go on to you, unless you've already done it while I was missing.
No, I
Is that I
didn't. I
think
spoke at
that
Palace.
yeah, shock. I think that we will win. I can see Palace scoring a really annoying goal from somewhere, even though they're losing a few players and they've created a few chances in their last games. I think we're going to win this one 2-1 again. And I think this will be a fantastic result going into the international break. Um, and I really do think this is another. We keep saying it. We said it about Everton. We said it about Villa before that. We said that about Brentford. But this one, I really do think now that they've got a few injuries and suspensions, a real barometer for where can this Fulham team go? Can we go there and take advantage? Because I think a lot of mid-table teams go there despite this, probably happy with a point. I think we've now got to go there and go for all three. I don't think a point would be a terrible result, but I think
No.
that if we were trying to push to the next stage, then a point would be below par.
Yeah, knowing Marco Silva, he's not going to be like, we'll settle for a point. I mean,
No.
by the way, I think before we come on to my team, which by the way, I completely agree with you 100%. I would love to see Wilson start for Pereira. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think it will happen, but it would
Yeah.
be great. What about that speech from Marco? And
Oh,
I'll caveat it with this, yeah. I'm usually, when other clubs post this, I'm like, it's interesting, but I'm not, it's interesting, but I'm not super into it.
yeah.
Because the camera's there, does it feel, all these Amazon documentaries and stuff, like, again, it's interesting, but doesn't get my blood pumping. Do you know what I mean? However, I think Marco, like, cameras or no cameras, that is obviously how he is. I thought that the way he spoke to the team, then the way he spoke to Harry, for me was like an incredible, incredible moment. A little bit of insight into that man management. I'm very lucky that I get to speak to him on a week by week basis, and he obviously gives fantastic insight. But to see him with the players and a player like Harry Wilson, who genuinely, and I don't want to be disrespectful, like I just hadn't thought about that much this season. His cameo at
Yeah.
Preston was just not very
Yeah.
good, and I just didn't see a way back in for him. I'm absolutely delighted for him. I genuinely love him a lot as the doorbell
Yeah.
goes. Um, what did you think of that silver clip? Yeah,
So, I mean, for one, like you say, it seemed authentic, which a lot of those
yeah.
sort of pieces of content don't. And yeah, we are a bit biased because it is Fulham related, not another club. But I loved seeing it. And like you say, the way that he was with Wilson at the end was great. I like that he said, "It's my fault. It's not your fault that you haven't been playing." I like that he's
Mhm.
just completely owning it. And Wilson, until this point, hasn't deserved to start. And we know that Marcus Silva, I would say, with the exception of Andreas Pereira, he only plays players when they deserve to start. There is a strange thing there. And I do think it's partly because of profiles in the squad of Pereira as well. He just doesn't really want to maybe go with two attacking players. He also
Mhm.
probably doesn't want to go with, if Lukic was fit, which we don't think he is, next to Berger. Maybe that's a little bit too defensive for a game of this sort. But yeah, I mean, Wilson has definitely earned at least a heavier involvement in the next few games, whether it's more minutes off the bench. I would hope it's a start. And I would hope that if he does start, I do not want to see him on the right wing because I honestly do think that
Yeah,
he's better centrally for us when he's getting into those dangerous areas. But all the content from the game, that included, has been great. I love all the players' reactions. I like talking about last night sort of thing. All the angles of the goals have been great. I do think the media team, just a completely separate point, have really stepped it up this year. I think the level of content we've been getting has been really, really interesting, and just more regular. It's not necessarily an enhancement, but just it's coming every home game. So that's been great. And yeah, we're very lucky to have Marco Silva. And his reaction to the second goal was, well, actually, his reaction to the second goal was fantastic. His reaction to the first goal, where brief celebration, get back to the centre circle and let's win it.
yeah.
Loved that because, 4 minutes left of added time at that point. You think, we've just got a 92nd minute equaliser. A lot of managers probably think, it's not been our day, take the point. Or at least, maybe try and go for it, but they're not like bloodthirsty, go for the win. Silva wasn't happy, and I loved that.
Silva's stock for me right now is as high as Unai Emery. You think of Arne Slot, Guardiola, Arteta. Like I can't think of another manager like Ange Postecoglou. Not really. I'm in terms of just. Sorry, I just think that Ange Postecoglou is obviously a great manager. Respect him a lot, and we're playing them soon. But in terms of like who is impressing me more, this is not even bias. I'd have to say that Silva is up there. Beating Frank, who's basically on a
Yeah,
pedestal with Silva, or some people seem to think that Frank is this, you know, God's gift. But I see where they come from. He comes across very, very well. I genuinely think Silva right now is one of the best managers in the Premier League, and people are sleeping on
yeah.
that still. Still,
Honestly, I'm glad they are because I don't want him to get picked for another job. There'll probably be some vacancies soon. West Ham is probably one, but I've got to say right now, I've always been a bit nervous about the West Ham job for Silva, because I do feel like they're a club that even though they get a lot wrong, they're ambitious enough that they will probably end up back in some sort of European competition for the next couple of years. I can just see it
mm,
happening. And he definitely wants to manage a team in Europe. Hopefully, it's us. But you can see when vacancies happen why people would be interested. United was still linked with him before they appointed Amorim. So yeah, I feel very lucky that he's still our manager. And what it really showed me is just the togetherness that he's brought from this squad is fantastic. In all the videos, in the celebrations for the goals, it's just yeah. And like you say, Thomas Frank, great manager, done great things with Brentford. We take all the bias aside, we take any sort of negative feelings towards him or Brentford side as a manager. Fantastic job. But I do think
mm,
Monday potentially showed why we think that Silva is better. And it's quite simply that Frank's very good at the pragmatic side of the game. But I think in terms of coaching a team to win a game, I think that Silva is always your man. And I
yeah.
think that what he gets out of the squad at his disposal usurps anything that Frank or others in similar positions could muster.
I think we should start wrapping up. Just wanted to say that I don't think it's any secret now, and I don't think anyone's really picked up on this. I haven't seen that much, but the sling is off for Lukic. He's back in training.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
with Jeff Bruce. He's in his training gear, and he's training. So obviously, don't expect him to be back starting, but he could make the bench on Saturday, which is obviously
yeah,
very exciting. That basically means we've got everyone back fit, including Carlos Vinicius, who obviously hasn't got a look in so far this season. Just wouldn't put it beyond him if he came up with a moment of magic at some point in this
yeah,
season, but you just
yeah,
never know. Um, there was one thing I wanted to talk about, and that was Rodrigo Menez.
yeah,
Now, obviously, he came on. I actually thought that Jimenez didn't have the best game on Monday. He did well holding up the ball a couple of times, but there was a lot of times where Jimenez would be on the floor. And I actually thought we
yeah,
should have had a penalty as well at the start of the second half.
yeah.
Should have
I
had a penalty at the start of the second half.
I really, really, I'm just wax lyrical about Marco Silva, so I won't doubt the guy. From the stands, I really, really disagreed with his decision to take off Jimenez. I agree with you; he wasn't having his best game, but I did still feel like he was getting in the positions that he
Mm,
needed to, and I wasn't impressed with Muniz's cameo at all. But for the second goal, he drags the defenders away and frees up Wilson, and that in itself justified the substitution.
It's
Um,
intelligent play.
it's interesting about Muniz because we've now got about a couple of months before he probably gets a guaranteed start pending fitness in the FA Cup. Um, Before then, unless Jimenez, the performances completely drop off, you can't see it happening. It's a very interesting situation now because I would love Muniz to keep popping up with a goal off the bench for the time being. I'd love to see Lukic off the bench, by the way, that'd be great. But equally, I'm thinking, about to have another international break. Should we just keep him in bubble wrap and say that he can't go, just so that he's absolutely
Mm.
fine, and then all good for Wolves? But being honest, it's better for Fulham if he's involved because he's a great player, and I'd love to see him on the bench. Let's say in a dream world we're a couple of goals up. There is nothing, I'll tell you this right now, there's nothing I would love more, Kevin Keegan style, than if we
Mm.
brought on both Lukic but also Ryan Sessegnon for a cameo at Crystal
We need
Palace. I would
Cess.
love to see him on the pitch, but also it's quite funny because they had him on trial, which just adds another element of fun. But I'd love to see Sessegnon on the pitch.
Two more questions before we go. By the way, I think that Fulham are going to win 2-0. I think we'll win 2-0
Okay,
against Crystal Palace. I'm really confident. I'm really confident. If we can ride a storm early on, I think we can control the game. I really do think we can. Okay. Question about Sander Berger's performance. Everyone absolutely raving about him. And this is so good to see after his really poor game against Aston Villa. Sander Berger making some really big blocks, some really big tackles in there. Almost, dare I say, Jalpalinia-esque.
yeah. Brilliant performance. He was much better than he was against Villa against Everton, but this took it to a whole other level. He was dictating the play. Positionally was great. Wasn't getting caught out like he was against Villa. Winning duels in the air, winning things on the floor. Passing was really good. Kept the ball moving. Kept progressing it wide, which was the only way that we could sort of try and beat the low block. And in the end, that's how we beat it twice with the two crosses. Great performance. If I was going to say one thing I'd love to see a bit more from him, it's something that I don't know if we can see from him while he's playing
Mm-hmm.
as the defensive role. It's just a little bit more going forward, just because he was really good at that at Sheffield United. He did offer that sometimes at Burnley as well. Obviously, he scored that goal against us last Christmas, where he was a driving run and then a shot from range. So I'd love to see that a bit more, but maybe that's something that's not possible until it's, let's say, Lukic in his position and him slightly further forward, which is something that could happen like it did against City. Um, if he's fit, I'd be interested to see if that's what we go with against Wolves. Even that could be the case. But his best performance in a Fulham shirt by an absolute country mile, and probably now the benchmark of what we need to see from him because that's why we spent reasonably big bucks on him. That's why he was our top target. And in that one performance, if you'd have put João Palhinha's face on him instead, I don't think you'd be surprised at any of it. If you just put his number on the back, put Jay Palhinha on the back, you would think that it was him.
26.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question from me, because I'm just fascinated to know what sort of reception do you think that Anderson will get on Saturday at Sellers Park?
Really interesting. I think it will be mostly positive. I think that whenever there's a former player, regardless of circumstances, there's always going to be like one or two that maybe do a little boo or a little, few gesticulations, whatever. I think he'll get a good reception. I think he'll go around clapping them regardless of the result, that sort of thing. Just because club captain there for so long, I still think he didn't leave in particularly bad circumstances. They all seem to be pretty happy with his replacement as well. So I've seen all these Palace fans going on about how it's been a win-win because he's enjoying life, Fulham are enjoying life, and Palace are happy with his replacement. So I would hope that they give him the reception pre-game at least to justify that. But oh my goodness, imagine if he scores.
Poor. I mean, he could. He might.
He could,
Our record at Palace has been very, very good of recent. We haven't conceded in the last 3 times we've gone there. Where is the wood? Here we go. Right. We're done. This was slightly a bit of a chaotic Jack and Joe show. We were sort of bouncing from one game to another. Joe then disappeared for a bit, but Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi, isn't it? It can't be all, fairies and pixies and rainbows and unicorns. So, I'm really looking forward to Saturday, and because the confidence is so high up right now, and Palace is. Yeah, I think they had a good result against Wolves. I think they were. I thought they were unlucky not to get the winning goal. I thought that
100%.
that
Yeah.
goal should have probably counted. It would have left Wolves absolutely stricken at the bottom of the table. I actually I'm going to say that this is a good time for an international break after this game. I feel like I just personally need to just calm down because there's a lot of energy that's gone into that Monday game. My head is still spinning from it, basically. I think it'd be obviously it's frustrating because if we win, then you're like, oh God, bring on Wolves and then bring on Spurs. But I personally need a little bit of a break. I think these players have put in quite a big shift in the last four games. You know, the loss to Villa took a lot out of us, conceding late, and then obviously against Everton, obviously Monday night, and then God knows what happens on Saturday at Selhurst Park, Joe.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I mean, I don't like international breaks, but in terms of if there was going to be one, not the worst time. Still feels quite recent from the last one, but this always happens. It's nothing new. I've seen a lot of people acting as if this November international break's just been invented, whereas I feel like it's been here since the dawn of time. Um, I I think that the interesting thing outside of Fulham to look out for this weekend is what happens with Wolves against Southampton. And the reason I say that is
Yeah.
obviously they're our next opponent. And firstly, from a managerial perspective, if they don't beat Southampton, regardless of your opinion on if you should go or not, it is the perfect time to sack a manager because you give the new guy a couple of weeks to bed in his ideas. What's also interesting is there's about four players that I listed to you the other day, Jack, that are on four yellow cards for Wolves,
Mm.
and therefore one away from suspension. Obviously, we've only got one player on four, and that's Lukic, who is unlikely to be involved from the start, and therefore less likely to get that fifth. But for Wolves, it's both fullbacks, so Ait Nouri and Semedo, who are both key players for them, especially Ait Nouri recently. Toti Gomez at centre back, and also João Gomez at centre midfield.
Mm.
So, those are four key players. Even if one or two of them got a fifth yellow, I mean, it's a boost. But very interested to see about that Wolves Southampton game because there's a lot of repercussions that could play into what team we come up against when we play them on the 23rd of November.
Of course, we'll see Andre at the Cottage for the first
Of
time
course,
ever.
yeah.
A bit about
Although
3 or 4 months too.
he's lost his place, in that Wolves team. I mean, he might win it back,
Uh,
but he's not started the last couple, which is very interesting because he'd started life very well there. He'd been getting good reviews from fans, but that's another element of this Fulham Wolves game.
the interesting thing about the Wolves game, like you say, is they have that time over the international break to make a decision. You know, if they don't win, it'll be one win in 21. And then their following games are Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, Everton away, West Ham away, Ipswich at home, and then Leicester away. So like a
It's a
really
good
like
run, yeah.
decent run of fixtures. But I read this morning that they had Gary Neville has the backing of the owners, but one win in 20 is alarming by any stretch. Right, Joe, thanks so much for being here. It's been a long one today.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for everyone's patience as I dipped in and out of this. Hope you enjoyed Monday night and enjoy Palace on Saturday.
Yeah, Palace away, the pride of South London, the famous Palace boys. My brother supports Palace, my cousin supports Palace, but we are the oldest club in London, and three outweighs two in terms of myself and my two brothers. So hopefully we get the result as well and stick it to them. Absolutely. Take care, guys, and come on, Fulham.